Well, hello, everyone. Have you heard about this secret ploy that could destroy the entire world's economy? Kind of a crazy thought, but it's been floating around out there. And it has something to do with the currency reset for basically the whole world. There was a video floating around, and you might have seen this. I don't know if you realize or not. This is actually pretty real video. When I first saw it, I was wondering, like, well, it's in Russian, so who knows whether or not this guy's actually saying what the subtitles are saying. He's saying, right? And then I started looking into it more, and I was like, oh no, he's actually saying this. So that's the big question: is did Putin's advisor really say this? So here's the video that I've got pulled up right here. This is Putin's senior advisor, Anton Kobyakov. And he basically accused the US of a secret conspiracy to leverage stablecoins against US debt and thereby eliminate it. And he proposed this as a problem because it's going to have repercussions across the entire world, right? So, what he said, I'm going to quote here: the US is now trying to rewrite the rules of the gold and cryptocurrency markets. Remember the size of their debt, $35 trillion. These two sectors are essentially alternatives to the traditional global currency system. Not sure why he said 35 trillion. I think maybe he just didn't have updated information, but we're over 37 trillion dollars in debt now. So take that for what it's worth. What this means, what the idea means anyway. So the idea that he's getting at of what the US is going to do is not elimination by destruction necessarily, though that if you were to not look too deep into it, that kind of sounds like that's what he's saying. It's more elimination or a reduction by restructuring. If the US converts debt from fiat to crypto, depending on how they do it, it will actually devalue the debt. And this feels like a whole bunch of double negatives, so it's kind of hard to follow and almost harder to explain. But bear with me here. How this works in theory, and this is a real theory, like this is a thing that you can do. The Treasury announces that not a thing that has happened. I need to make that clear. A thing that can be done, not a thing that has happened for cryptocurrency. The Treasury announces that the national debt, government bonds, and other related government currencies will now be tied to a stable coin. So here's where people get confused. They just throw out the word crypto like a blanket, right? Like, how we say Kleenex for tissue. It's like a brand kind of thing. But the reality is that stablecoins and crypto are different. A stablecoin is always the same value. So a stablecoin is always valued at one, depending on what stablecoin it is. And you have many different stablecoins, not nearly as many different cryptos, though. Cryptos are volatile. They move up and down. And I do kind of see, it looks like my video is a little laggy. So I hope it's all good on your guys' end and maybe just bad on mine. But anyway, I'm going to get back to it. So anyway, those are two different things. So he said crypto, but the reality is you shouldn't do this with crypto. It should be done with a stable coin. And if they were to do it, my speculation is that it would be a stable coin, not crypto, but they are connected. Okay. So they're not separate. They still affect each other, but they are different things. Once the transition from the national debt dollar is done over to the stable coin, once that's complete, all the other countries will be able to redeem their debt with that stable coin instead of the fiat dollar, right? With the particular stable coin. If that stable coin experiences disruption from volatility or other regulatory influences, then the value of the debt decreases, naturally decreasing the amount of debt. This could turn the roughly $37 trillion into significantly less in what would feel like overnight. And I don't mean literally overnight, but it would be very quick. Sound crazy? Well, the funny part about this is we've done it before, just not with crypto. Kobyakov, in fact, is the one that pointed that out. And I apologize to this guy if I'm slaughtering his name. It's Russian, and I'm just English pronouncing it all over the place, American English. Okay, so Kobyakov said, as in the 1930s and the 1970s, the U.S. plans to solve its financial problems at the world's expense, this time by pushing everyone into the crypto cloud, he called it. He's referring to FDR's devaluation against gold and Nixon's departure from it, respectively, 1930 and 1970. Excuse me. So that went down the wrong tube. One moment. Always lovely when something like that happens live, right? Okay, let's move along. In March of 1993, when the Federal Reserve Bank of New York could no longer honor its commitment to conserve currency to gold, President Franklin Roosevelt declared a national banking holiday. And you can see this article here. This explains the whole thing. So the government suspended the gold standard and forced the public to turn in their gold coins and certificates, and further prohibited the use of tangible gold as currency, in essence. The public was given notes, dollars, at the rate of $20.67 per ounce of gold, and raked in hundreds of millions of dollars worth in gold and gold certificates in just a few months. It was like March to June or something like that. The very next year, the price of gold increased to $35 per ounce, a devaluation of the dollar by nearly 70%, where we held until Nixon literally nixed the gold standard. See what I did there? That's not where you get the term from, but it works. So that was in the 70s. This move by FDR was a reset. The banks were failing and debt was increasing. Nixon's move was another type of reset because he moved us off the gold standard entirely and into fiat. So we went from gold backed to oil backed essentially, and we cut the link to gold altogether. And this helped alleviate the debt, the national debt, and it actually kind of messed up a lot of other people in the process. And now we have another similar scenario going on. We have massive debt and a new currency opportunity. So why wouldn't the US take advantage of that? That's kind of like, I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying, like, from a logical standpoint, it's like, well, we've got this new currency coming into play and we have a lot of debt, and we have proven this works before with a little bit of a different approach, but same general idea. Seems logical that we would do so, right? So basically, Kabyakov is saying that the US government is going to do to the world what FDR did to the American public back in the 30s. That's kind of an oversimplification, but it gets the point across. It's the same general idea, but obviously with this new modern currency situation. The suggestion here, though, that he is laying out is that crypto is bad. He's saying that this will force the world into a crypto cloud. Now, it's rhetoric that he is using to make this sound like a bad thing, from what I understand. He is presenting it as a problem, and I don't necessarily think it's as big of a problem as he says. There will always be disruptions in the system that are painful. That is a guarantee if this were to happen, but ultimately this is going to end up just being a change into a new currency system. And we're heading that way no matter what anyway. But he's ignoring the fact, or at least just not saying it, that I could find that the crypto will be pegged to gold, and we will simply go back onto the gold standard at that point. He did mention gold when he said gold and cryptocurrency. He said that we're restructuring it, right? But he didn't really exactly say how that's going to work. He just kind of presented it as America's messing with the world economy. And that was the end of that. And it was a warning to the Russian government. So the crypto will go back onto the gold standard. And so you can think of the crypto then as like the note. It's pegged, it's tied to gold, which, by the way, the value of gold just hit a new all-time high, which is, I think, interesting. So here's a fun fact for you. Do you know who owns the most gold in the world? This is crazy. You might know. We're going to go through this little list here real quick because it's kind of fun. This is the top 10 of who owns the most. Okay. So we got Netherlands at 10, India at 9, Japan at 8, Switzerland at 7, China at 6, Russia at 5, France at 4, Italy at 3, Germany at 2, and of course the United States is the number one owner of gold in the entire world by almost double, 8.133 tons versus Germany, which is in second at 3.362. Actually, that sounds like more than double if my math is correct on that. So, isn't that interesting that not only has gold increased in value, but we own the most of it? And by the way, the US has secretly, or not secretly maybe, but quietly been strategically moving gold into stateside vaults since Trump got back in office. I didn't know this until this morning. This came as kind of a shock to me. The US banks are flying gold from London to New York and Switzerland too. And there was another one somewhere else, I don't remember. But the US has been putting gold back stateside here into vaults. Weird, because that sounds like they're setting up for something, in my opinion. And this is a really good spot for me to let you hear a word from our sponsors.
Investing can be confusing and scary, but it doesn't have to be. Genesis Gold Group takes the guessing out of the game and guides you on your gold investment journey. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections, kind of like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there, 100% owned by you. So don't wait to get started. Visit filibustedgold.com today for a free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.
That's awfully convenient. Just kidding. Yeah, we've had that sponsor for a while now, and it just so happens to be a good one for this topic. So I thought that was a fun spot for you guys there to go check out some gold from our sponsor. They're pretty awesome. We like them a lot. And also, I jumped back over into the comments here, and I see your comment overflow, and I'm totally fine. Believe it or not, I do that all the time. I don't know why, but I regularly drink water like too fast or something and have to cough on it. So all is well. Nothing scary here. I'm used to it. So maybe you guys will get used to it if I do it enough on the channel. Anyway, everything that we just talked about right there, that was all based on fact. These are things that are happening. This guy really said that. And he is straight up saying that the US is going to do this. He's not saying, I fear that the US might do this. He is giving a warning and saying, this is the US plan and we need to be prepared for it. And I think that sometimes what happens as Americans, we have this sort of bias where we kind of just assume that if it wasn't said by the official spokesperson in America, it's not true, and it should be dismissed. And we don't look at voices from other places as serious. And this was one that, it kind of looked like, in my opinion, got overlooked really quickly. People just kind of went, weird, moving on, and didn't really take him seriously. But I'm kind of taking him seriously, and I'm really watching close to see what we do, because I do think that he's on to something here. And before I go any further, I need to throw out the usual disclaimer on this kind of topic. None of the things that I'm saying are financial advice. Crypto and gold, it's a risky business. If you decide to get into it, you have to know that it's volatile. You can lose a lot of money if you don't do it right. So be careful, be wary. And I am about to talk about some particular assets that will naturally have a kind of bias from myself as I talk about them. So please keep that in mind. I have been researching this for a very long time, and I am going to have a bias without meaning to. Even if I'm trying not to, it's going to come out. So make sure that when you research and when you invest, that you are confident in what you're doing. Don't make any decisions based off of what I say. Okay. All right. So here's a scenario. Here's how I think this actually could play out. And I'm going to be clear about what's fact and what's not. Fact, USDT, which is a stable coin, is also called Tether, is the largest stable coin by volume in the world. I see that there are people asking about, like, what is a stable coins? I kind of explained a little bit earlier, but I'll try to explain it a little bit more now. A stable coin is always valued at 1. So if you have USDT, it is always going to be the value of 1 USDT. Typically, you can trade it across the board for the fiat dollar. So it's like $1 equals 1 USDT or Tether. I'm just going to refer to it as Tether from now on. There aren't as many stable coins as there are cryptocurrencies. Stable coins are literally that the reason they're called stable is because they really don't move very much, but they do move. They just don't move to the degree that cryptocurrency moves. A stable coin will likely never bounce up to $100,000 in value, because that's not what they were designed to do. A stable coin is designed to be able to peg a cryptocurrency to it. So when you buy a cryptocurrency, it has a sort of backbone that goes along with it. You can kind of think of it like like gold and the dollar. They're different, but they both have value, right? The dollar is always a dollar, always a dollar. It never changes, but the dollar's value might change based on what it's pegged to. The dollar is pegged to oil right now. So the dollar's value, well, and inflation and all kinds of things affect it, right? So it's not just that simple. But the $1 never changes, but the value of that dollar changes. So that's what we're talking about here. Is a stable coin is always a stable coin, but the value of that stable coin will change depending on other factors involved. Cryptocurrency is not that. Cryptocurrency is more like a stock almost, in a way. I mean, that's kind of a bad example, but you get the point from the volatility side of things. So Tether is an offshore currency. It was white papered, which means created, in the British Virgin Isles. And here's a fun little side note, a disturbing side note. The Virgin Islands are home to all the human trafficking hubs. Think Epstein's Island on the American side and Jimmy Savile on Britain's side, which is Britain's Epstein. And I'm not making any claims on that front. I'm just saying go do your own research. There's probably nothing to see here. Anyway, it is my opinion that Tether is a shadow currency because it's used on the black market to make transactions that would otherwise be at least frowned upon. Because Tether has survived longer than most stablecoins, and because it's centralized, I shouldn't say survived longer, it's been around longer than most stablecoins, and it's centralized, meaning there's one single issuer controlling and minting the Tether. It could theoretically serve as a vehicle for US Treasury debt notes. It kind of makes a lot of sense for that practical application. Its structure makes it easier to integrate with traditional finance than decentralized alternatives, though that same centralization also makes it vulnerable to trust and regulatory risk, which is what I think is the point behind this supposed strategy that I can't remember his name because it's so weird. Putin's advisor. Tether is on multiple blockchains, which just means that it uses a handful of cryptocurrencies to function. So every single cryptocurrency has a blockchain that it uses, and Tether kind of like rides on those same blockchains. It kind of uses the same roads in a sense, even though it isn't necessarily a part of that blockchain. It uses them, okay? And it uses them just like those particular blockchains need to be used. So if it's Ethereum, it uses it the way Ethereum would. If it's Solana, it uses it the way Solana would. It kind of adapts to that. All right. So putting the treasury debt onto something like Tether would force the rest of the world to use all those cryptocurrencies, not necessarily Tether, because it uses all the other blockchains. So it actually kind of opens up options. People don't use stablecoins necessarily. They're more like a backbone structure than practical currency, but they do use crypto, which is tied to stablecoins. It can get very confusing, and I know, so I apologize for that. But there are many crypto networks that issue Tether tokens, but the top few are Tron, Ethereum, and Solana. Those are the biggest cryptos that use or that Tether uses as blockchain networks to function. Right now, there are certain redemption policies in place that keep the US locked into that $37 trillion debt because we are still on the fiat system. We can't change the redemption unit, which is the dollar, without redefining the system itself, just like Nixon did. We went from the gold back to dollar to the oil back to dollar, and redemption policies changed almost overnight. Here's the theory. The Treasury puts out new regulation that transitions the chosen debt currency from fiat to Tether, effectively forcing the world to use crypto, but this softens the blow because they don't have to use a specific crypto. So it makes Tether kind of desirable in a way. They have options. This is just for debt, not necessarily trade. I'm not saying that it's going to force everybody to use Tether for trade. But once the transition is complete, there could be a fallout, be it government restriction on redemption or freezing of assets or regulatory action based on recent bills such as the Clarity Act and the Genius Act, etc., or regulatory action based on official trade clarity, as in the government decides to use a different crypto than one that Tether is not tied to, because it's not tied to all of them. It's just a certain handful of them. Suddenly, the debt value drops, and because Tether relies on the other crypto networks, it will naturally take a hit if those do. Of course, the opposite is also true, so it's a risk. With countries like Japan and China owning massive amounts of debt that is now significantly lower in value, that pinch point gets tighter. It's kind of like a debt collector. They purchase a debt, And then after that, they just kind of get what they get because, they own the debt now. And so they really can't complain a whole lot. So when you apply this to entire countries and world currencies, it could cause extreme upsets. Now, another interesting theory that I've seen that at first glance doesn't work in my mind is that we'll use Bitcoin to do this. People are saying we can use Bitcoin to pay off the debt, which makes sense in a way, but to replace the fiat system with Bitcoin, it, as far as the debt goes, doesn't really work in my mind because Bitcoin is too volatile, and that would upset the system probably too much too quickly, because that you could do a really serious rug pull with that. But if we did do it with that strategy, it would probably kill Bitcoin. So there's that, which I'm really not so sure isn't the plan. So that leads us to the next big question. Wouldn't this cripple all of crypto if we did this? The answer, in my opinion, is no. It would actually do quite the opposite. We would have, like I talked about in the September 23rd video, which you guys should go watch if you're interested in more crypto stuff and how it aligns with Hebrew festivals and all of that stuff. It's kind of a wheat and tares situation where part of the new regulation for crypto, that system will be that not all cryptos are going to make it. Some are going to be the chosen ones, and some are going to be burned as chaff and, tossed in the wind. And whatever crypto it is they decide to use for this strategy, if they do decide to apply this strategy, will kind of be like a scapegoat. It will be the one that takes the whole hit of the crypto regulatory world that is coming. We have to regulate crypto because in some ways, I don't mean centralize it. I mean, just regulate it in some ways. And it's happening. We have laws that are going into effect that are going to do that. So that crypto will take the fall, but it will probably negatively impact the other cryptos for a certain period of time. I don't know how long that will be. And it will cause the world governments to have to say something or have to come together and agree on how do we make sure that we regulate this well enough that it doesn't get out of hand. And then they'll regulate crypto, and then there'll be the chosen ones that they use, and then the other ones will just simply not be used anymore. At the end of the day, the one thing that I can confidently say is that I 100% believe that we're about to experience a worldwide currency reset. And that belief is based on precedent because we've done it before with gold and with fiat. And the extra factor in this is this new technology. We are entering a whole new technological age, and crypto is the railway system for it. Lastly, I just want to point out that Trump kind of did vaguely warn some other world leaders, and I can't help but make a little bit of a connection here because one of them just so happens to be a major US debt holder. So is this Trump's leverage? I'm not sure. Time will tell. We'll see what happens. But either way, I think it's going to be interesting to watch this all play out. I'm glad you guys tuned in. I went a little bit longer than I intended to today. Probably my coughing fit did not help. But anyway, we're going to have another live stream tomorrow at either 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I hope to see you guys then. And I hope you guys have a great day.
Gold is not just a backup plan if the world falls apart. It's an investment opportunity that could set you up for generations. There's never really a bad time to invest in gold, but you want to make sure you have the right guide. And that is where Genesis Gold Group shines. Whether you are a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, their trusted expertise and competitive pricing makes them an easy choice. They offer tangible assets in case of emergencies, but they can also design the perfect IRA just for you. And they'll even cut through all that confusing red tape from the IRS. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer a more high-security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there and 100% owned by you. Genesis Gold Group is a safe, simple, and convenient way to invest. Visit filibustedgold.com today for your free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.